little bit of it, but basically that, and then when you're done, you just press
Pause.
press this
When I'm
when
done.
you're done. Yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Vanessa Nunez, and today I will be lecturing on. Oh my god. Hi everyone, my name is Vanessa Nunez, and for my Psychology 175 Psych and Law class, I will be presenting on jury duty in trial procedures. Specifically, I'll be focusing on how psychology plays a role in who gets selected for a jury and how jurors make decisions once they're inside the courtroom. So firstly, the goal of a jury duty, the goal of a jury duty is to guarantee a fair trial to. I can't do this. Hi everyone, my name is Vanessa Nunez, and for my Psychology and Law capstone project, I will be focusing on jury selections and trial procedures. Specifically focusing on how psychology plays a role in who gets selected for a jury and what the process is once jurors make it into the courtroom. When we think about trials, we usually focus on the judge, the lawyers, the defendants, or most in case, the evidence. But one of the most important aspects of a trial is the jury. A jury is supposed to represent everyday people from the community, and their job is to listen to the evidence and reach a fair decision. This is why a juror should not be partial or biased to the information or to the person. They preferably shouldn't be aware of the facts before the case, and they cannot let their personal beliefs be the deciding factor of the facts or before the facts. So now we're going to be talking about jury selection. So there are 3 steps of a jury selection. Firstly, the notices are sent out. Secondly, people show up. In most cases, some of the people that were summoned show up. And thirdly, we have an official jury. So the way that this is broken up is that 1, the notices are sent out via the mail, and all citizens at some point will receive one. All citizens above the age of 18 and those who have previously gotten a felony conviction. These are sent out at random and are usually based on voter registration lists. Secondly, the day comes. Once a day comes for people to show up to their assigned date, they will go to the voir dire process, which basically means that the lawyers will be asking them a set of questions to see if they can be impartial and not biased towards the case at hand. And they pick out and choose who seems like a better fit and would help them win the case. And thirdly, we have the official jury. Once the voir dire process is over, whoever is remaining will become part of the official jury. These people should be fair, representative, and attentive to all the facts presented. So this is also what lawyers will ask, which gets me to my next slide. What do lawyers ask in the voir dire? They can ask a range of questions from personal relation, personal views, or the familiarity with the case. When it comes to personal relations, they want to gauge if the individual has had a previous experience with, like, for example, I wrote down the San Diego Police Department. If they had a negative experience, that could really hurt the case, so they would probably let that person go. For the personal views, they would ask questions like, what is your viewpoint of pharmacies or big pharma charging extra for certain medications? Maybe that individual is low income and would not favor a big company in this case. And finally, they would probably ask something to the person regarding the familiarity with the case. Have you heard of this case extensively on social media? If the person is close proximity, they probably have heard hearsay or rumors about this, and that could be really damaging to all parties involved. So that is typically something that would be reason to be let go of the juries. So next up we have statistical jury. about jury duty in the state of California. So according to the information shown here, around 10 million people are summoned for jury duty in California. And that means about 1 in 4 statewide are called or receive the little card in the mail to serve. Out of these, around 4.5 million actually complete jury duty, either in person or on the phone, on call, or they're just put on standby if needed. And then from this number, around 100,000 people are sworn in as jurors at the end of the day, and around 70% of this 100,000 are complete service in one day. Sometimes it can be way longer than that. A trial can take weeks, and you are expected to be on the jury for that amount of time. So these numbers shown here show how large the jury system is, because this is, again, just for the state of California. Even though only a smaller number of people actually end up becoming jurors in a trial, millions of people are part of this process. This also shows how jury is important for democracy. They wouldn't go to this length if it wasn't dire to someone's outcome, their livelihood is at stake. This also raises questions on representation. If a million people are summoned, are juries really representative of community? So, and then how would this look like with the psychological aspects? So, next up we have trial procedures. Now I'm going to shift towards this area. Once the jury is actually selected, what are the psychological effects of this group mentality? So first off, we have personal beliefs and group decisions, because again, one jury is made up of 12 separate people, 12 separate minds with separate beliefs and personal connotations. So firstly, we have personal beliefs. There have been experiments and studies that have shown people forego their personal beliefs if the rest of the group thinks differently than they do, even if they know that the rest of the group have an incorrect stance. And then when evidence is presented, or when evidence presented is unclear, jurors are sometimes persuaded by personal factors. In theory, jurors are supposed to be listening carefully, taking the evidence and apply the law exactly how the judge explains it in the case. But again, jurors are humans, so sometimes they will bring their own human emotions and thoughts into the courtroom. And then in group decisions, usually what happens is that if the majority of jurors favor one side over the other towards the beginning of the court process or the case process, that side will usually end up being the winning verdict. And also, usually, there is one person who always rises to the top and is designated as the talker, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the foreperson that actually gets to read the verdict. So we have women in juries, which is really interesting because it has come to shown that women's thoughtful nature significantly proves jury deliberations to be more thought out. Their thoughtful nature improves the quality of the decisions. So their different perspectives in life, the way they interact and really think about the evidence can improve the deliberative quality that they can give to the judge, and when stating the final verdict, they will really have thought things out. Gender diverse juries produce more thorough, representative, and thought out deliberations. Contrast to the alpha juror. So the alpha juror are jurors that are instructed, all jurors are instructed to be neutral, but as mentioned, there will always be one that will always be the one talking, that has the strongest personality in the room. And this person, even unintentionally or unsubconsciously, will really make the decision sway to whatever they are leaning towards. So if the alpha juror is like, hey guys, we should vote guilty to get out of here, they will probably be like, yes, let's do that, let's leave. They will sway the jury, which is obviously not the point. But who typically is this one juror? So most of the time, as I said, this isn't really necessarily the spokesperson, but it's the person that usually is the loudest in the room. They have a strong personality. They typically are male and are white. So the psychological effect in this is that initial majority choice is usually what ends up being chosen at the end. If the majority of guilters vote not guilty in the beginning, in the end, that side will most likely win. People really make up their minds at the beginning and don't really change it from there. So to go with this, we have the Asch conformity line experiment. So this case goes that Solem and Asch designed an experiment to test social pressures in a majority group. And this tested how can social pressures influence someone's judgment and personal beliefs. And this was actually tested by having a group of participants, half of which knew what was going on, and the other half, well, not tested together, didn't know what was going on, and they were presenting these lines. And for the majority of the experiment, they were saying the right answers, and everyone was agreeing with them. But towards the end, in order to determine if the last person being tested would just conform to what everyone was saying, despite being wrong, they would shout out the obvious wrong answer and see if the very last person would stick to their own beliefs and be like, no, this is obviously wrong, here's my answer, rather than, yes, this is the correct answer, despite them knowing it was wrong, just to see if they would follow the rest of the group. And the results were that 76% of the participants went along with this incorrect information in an avoidance to not fit in, or for the rest of their peers thinking that they were dumb or they were being conflicted upon. So one reported saying, I knew I was wrong, but I didn't want to look stupid in front of the rest of the group. And this actually is really relevant to juries. The psychological experiment shows that potential jurors can be socially influenced. This can manifest in conforming to avoid conflict from fellow jurors, feelings of self-doubt. Sometimes they will believe themselves, even if they have a strong belief that they are correct, they will have self-doubt and think things like, I probably missed a key factor, maybe wasn't listening hard enough, like maybe everyone else is right and I'm just wrong. They're probably thinking that they're opposition of the group, and this actually pressures jurors to not think too critically of the facts. Like if everyone else has already made up their mind, they probably will not be keen to listen to the rest of the facts carefully and really take in and give a qualitative decision of the person on Charles' life. Finally, we have a conclusion. There is a lot of intersectionality between psychology and child selection procedures. And a little bit more information can and most probably will determine if someone is fit for a jury, like their gender, women or man, behaviors are different, economic status, if the person has been involved with a big company, like hasn't been involved with claims, they probably will not. If in the cases like this big company versus this small business owner, it would probably hurt the lawyer on the opposing side, and they would probably not choose that juror. Similarly, profession, if a lawyer knows that someone on the juror, or they find out using the voir dire process that they know the sequence of how, like the process of a courtroom, they probably will not pick that person. They know too much. And finally, like their personality, are they shy? Are they the type to speak up? All of this would really have the psychological effect. So thank you so much for listening to my presentation about jury selection and the psychological effects of trial procedures. And here is my works cited. Thank you so much for listening.